You're listening to Canary Flyby, food for thought from a place of faith. Here's Basil and Gons.
Hey everybody, and welcome to Canary Radio Flyby. My name's Basil.
And this is Gons. As Basil said, this is a flyby. It's probably one of the more compelling flybys, I would say.
Yeah, it was nice. I don't think we've done a flyby yet in 2015, this whole year. So here it is. We're talking with our buddy Sam from God's Property Radio. Property Radio. Some of you may listen to their podcast. If you don't, go check it out. They're awesome dudes. We got to hang out with them at the Prophecy Forum a couple months ago. We talk about that a little bit. Talk about some breakfast foods. We talk about all sorts of good stuff.
Ken Tovine. And stay tuned to the very end because you'll hear my little guitar doodly stuff.
Good stuff.
And,
good stuff.
And Sam, he's a really good singer and a good lyricist. And so we're gonna
do that.
Publicize the song Baptized in Credit.
Going live and let's see. Yeah, all sorts of good stuff. Anything else that we need to mention? I don't think so.
No, let's get into it.
There you go. Okay, here we go.
Pew pew.
First off, since we're recording now I can properly talk a little bit about meeting you guys at the Prophecy Forum, which was fantastic.
It was fantastic.
Yeah, that was the one thing. This is a funny story, and I think Dan will get a kick out of it, and you guys probably will too. But so initially, I emailed Gons about doing the outro, like both you guys doing our outro for the Tom Bionic episode, and that was like our 1 year anniversary episode, and you guys were kind of running around all over the place, like on 2 hours of sleep? What was that?
Something like that. I got 2 hours on Friday night, and then I got up to do the presentation on Saturday morning.
Yeah, no, it was crazy.
Yeah, it was insane.
We were like zombies.
Anyway, I kind of thought Gons remembered what was going on, as far as the email, but I didn't realize how much you had to do. So I got there, and luckily, it was awesome. I got to have breakfast with you Gons that next morning. I was holding my daughter in the lobby there because she woke up early. But
yeah, that was cool.
That was awesome to catch up with you. But yeah, I was mentioning to you, talking about music and possibly jamming on the guitar later or something. So fast forward to later at night, after pretty much the whole thing's over, you guys are doing your banjo and guitar dealie, and that kind of fell through because of the technical difficulties that were happening.
That's right. We actually haven't even talked about that on the podcast.
No, the worship that first night, huh?
Yeah, that didn't happen.
Yeah. Not important.
Well, better time.
Yeah.
So anyway, those technical difficulties, I don't know if you want to go into the details on that, but what happened exactly other than technical difficulties. But
yeah, not ours.
Yeah,
somebody else's technical difficulties.
Yeah. So anyways, Dan and I were figuring, hey, let's do this outro with you guys. And so you guys are like, okay, and you guys were so tired. We get to the stage, and you guys pick up your banjo and your guitar, and Dan and I are kind of not knowing what's really going on because we were under the impression this is supposed to be an outro for recording, just dialogue, for the episode, and you guys are just kind of strumming your guitar and your banjo, and the most confused looks on you guys' faces, and you're kind of muttering under your breath. So here's Basil. He's like, so what are we doing? And John's looking back at him. I don't know. Basil, I don't know what we're doing. and then Dan and I looked at each other like, what are they doing? Finally, in about 3 seconds, it all kind of clicks in my head. I'm like, oh, Gons thinks I want to jam on the guitar like I mentioned at breakfast. Oh. So then I turned to you guys, and I'm like, guys, it's totally cool. I just want to record a convo for the podcast. And it just gets silent for 5 seconds, like crickets. And then Basil, you're like, oh, talking? That'd be way more fun.
Yeah.
I was so
awesome.
confused. Yeah, Guns earlier that day was like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna play an outro for their episode, like, cause we have music on the end of the episodes." So like, oh, I guess that's kind of cool. I don't know if I'm prepared to kind of just jam out something that'll be, that'll survive forever.
Yeah, I don't know.
Right.
I think there was too much information passing through my brain, and like outro, guitar.
Slash, I know
like-
that's a problem too. You tell a bunch of musicians that we're gonna record an outro that like doesn't really. You gotta.
Right. Sorry about the confusion, guys.
No, it's all good.
It's all good.
And it was a funny conversation too, because I mean, we were still in like that insanely like tired state when we were recording, even just talking.
Oh, I know.
And yeah, afterwards, I remember Gon's just like, "Oh man, I don't even really remember what I said."
Yeah, I think Sam he censored some of the stuff for me, which is good because it was
Gon just starts
Yes, I
going
did.
into his like personal like taxes and stuff.
Financials.
Yeah.
it wasn't even like personal. It was
Full-on conversation about taxes, like randomly at the end.
no, it was I think it was about I don't know. It was about the prophecy forum, stuff that should not be public,
No, there's personal taxes too.
Oh, really?
He talks
I don't
about your
remember, man.
personal.
Yeah, it was like
tax life.
personal stuff, like about how you owed a bunch of money and you were just like kind of ranting about it. It's been deleted, my friend. I don't even have it.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
How was that episode? How did that episode turn out? I regret to say
you can listen
I didn't
to
get
it.
to listen
You can
to
listen.
it, but-
Oh yeah, you can listen to it for yourself. I think it had. I don't know, like if you guys like what you determine like your success of an episode, but as far as downloads, I think it had like 1,200 or 1,300 downloads.
Boom.
Nice.
So that was kind of cool. And the outro, we talked for like 40 minutes or like 45 minutes.
Yeah,
so,
it was a long outro.
Yeah, mostly because I was giving my it was a therapy session for me. I was completely delirious. Sorry, go ahead.
So yeah, it was awesome. And then this I don't know if you want to even like include this part of the story, but like right after the that little ordeal I was just talking about with the banjo and the guitar. Then we're supposed to go like record this outro. You guys agreed to it, and then we get hit up by Dan Duvall, and Dan Duvall just like kind of busts in like, "Hey, you guys, we're gonna go to dinner, right?"
Oh yeah, that
It
was like
It was
midnight.
so late, and it was such a dilemma because we were exhausted and
but
just
hungry.
like talking nonsense, and like, man, Dan Duvall, like I love that guy. I just want to spend as much time as I can with him, but at the same time, I'm like, man, my head says yes, but my body says no.
Exactly. I just felt so bad for you guys because like I'm trying to pull you into one direction and then you got Dan pulling you. I'm like, I just like gave up almost right there. I was like, all right, Dan, I guess we're going out to dinner.
And we did, and we had breakfast for dinner.
That's right. We went to where do we go? I don't
IHOP.
remember. IHOP. That's right.
I think my favorite part though was before we left for IHOP, as we were exiting, Dan was like, "I parked over here," and Basil, you were so tired, dude. Me and my sister walked into the car, and Basil was just like, "Okay, we'll be right there." Just so tired. You were just so dead and done with like your day. And then Sarah and I and my sister, we drive over like to follow you guys over there, and we park, and Basil's circling around Dan Duvall's car like relentlessly, just perfect circles.
Yeah, I was practicing my stunt driving on the rental car that we had. Those were pretty good circles. I was like protecting his car from him. He was like trying to get to his car, and I was like a force field.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man, it it was, I can't imagine it was like in the car for like Audrey and Guns, but just being outside watching it was like, give me some popcorn.
Well, Audrey was in the car too. I remember.
Well, that was the best part because Audrey is such a sweet, nice, kind of quiet lady. And it was like for a big portion of that, it was just silent. It was just silence in the car as we're just like stunt driving around this parking lot. And Audrey's just in the back, just, taking it like a champ, just not asking questions. Just got in the car with this crazy person. And just let Jesus take the wheel.
How many people can say they were in the car with Basil and Gons doing parking lot donuts, in the car?
Only
one person. Exactly. All right. Anyway.
So, but when we got to IHOP, like just to cap it off here, I don't understand. I still don't know if I fully understand what exactly happened, but I do remember somebody. Well, this is my favorite Basil quote of the night. Well, I want to talk about that, but real quick. Okay. I was having the vegetarian conversation with you.
Yeah.
And I was like, so, like, what are the reasons why you don't eat, meat and whatnot? And you're like, all of the above, like, and I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then you got into like, but pepperoni, come on, man, that's just too far.
Yeah, I mean, you got to draw a line. I'm not dogmatic about it. I 99% of the time don't eat meat, but like, who's going to eat pizza without pepperoni? Like, that's just ridiculous. And then bacon is just sort of like what the heck are you talking about? But you'd be surprised. And I mentioned this at the table, like, you'd be surprised how many people in real life I've convinced that pepperoni isn't actually meat and like preserved my 100% vegetarianness in their mind. Just by being like, no, dude, pepperoni's not meat. They're like, oh, I mean, it just shows like the education of meat on people. They're like, what? Really? I guess I could see that. Like, they totally take my word for it. And then I have to repent for lying. And also eating pork. So, yeah.
But yeah, what was up with, so the final thing I wanted to just tackle here, what was up with the kid? Because the kid comes to the table, like, randomly, you'd gone to, like, the bathroom or something, and then you came back, and not too long after, this dude just kind of hands you a cell phone?
Yeah.
What was up with that?
Yeah, okay, so when I went to the bathroom, there was, like, a gaggle of high school kids sitting in the lobby of IHOP. And, they're having fun as high school kids do. I mean, I don't think they were intoxicated or anything. Seemed like a really wholesome situation, but there was probably like 8 to 10 of them. And I'm like walking past. Oh, no. I went to use a telephone is what it was. And so I'm walking out of the IHOP to make a phone call. And this group of high school kids just look at me, and I was all dressed up, and they really liked my outfit. And as I'm passing them, they're not talking to me, but they're like talking to each other, like, "Oh, look at his outfit. Oh, look at that guy." And I had like my top knot, and like, I don't know. I guess I just look like a crazy person in the Midwest or wherever. You kind of had this like Mitch Hedberg thing going on. Yeah, I get that a lot. So I mean, just like the quintessential like crazy California guy, I think is what some people would describe me as. And so I do that. I walk out the door. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm on the phone and I'm facing away from the glass door, and I turn around and one of the kids had followed me all the way to the last door. So he's on the other side of the glass door, and he just stares me right in the face and puts his hand up to the window. And, I'll play along. I mean, he kind of seemed like the class clown, like he was doing something to make everybody laugh, like all the high school kids. And so he puts his hand up to the window, and I stare him right in the face, completely cold-faced, like, I don't know, I might have even just like raised one eyebrow at him. and just met him halfway, just put my hand up to the glass. And we just stood there for like a good, realistically, 30 to 45 seconds, just making this connection through the glass. No idea who this kid is. No idea what's going on. Like, no context, except for like a group of high school kids just like rolling on the ground behind him. And so, and anyway, so I walk back in after all this ends. I walk back in and they're like, "Oh, you're so like cool. Where'd you get your clothes and stuff?" I'm like, "Thrift stores. We don't need to make any more textiles. There's enough textiles in the world to blah, blah, blah." I give them this little spiel. Then I come back to the table. Well, apparently this ingratiated me to them so much that the class clown kid steals another kid's cell phone in the group and comes and gives it to me for safekeeping. And so I'm holding on to this kid's cell phone for like a good portion of the meal. I almost kind of forget that I have it. And then anyways, long story short, the kid whose cell phone I had finally figures out I have it. And he came and very sheepishly asked for it back. And then I grilled him with the 20 questions. He had a girl on his screensaver, so I had to know who that was. And anyways.
It was so random. It was the most random thing I've ever.
Just making friends.
We're just like everybody at the table is just like, what is going on?
Yeah, because you guys had no.
We had no clue.
A kid just hands me like I'm in like some Born Identity like situation where I get handed a cell phone by like a random person and then I answer it and have to run off and like save the world. But no, it was a good time.
There was like 7 or 8 of us or something like that.
Oh yeah,
sitting at that table.
yeah. It was a big crowd, and I just like purposefully didn't. I just ignored it. He handed me the cell phone, just like put it down, and like we sat there for a little bit until somebody. I think it might have been Dan or you or someone, just like, "Wait, the heck is up with that cell phone, Basil?" Oh, don't worry about it. Anyways. It was a good.
That was awesome. I'm glad that we could get that out.
Yeah. Now the world knows. Okay, so we're here for a reason.
Yeah, this isn't story time.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So this is. I hear you have something interesting to tell us about. I kind of get the gist of it, but I'm not really sure what the heck's going on. I know that this was important enough for me to get up early in the morning. Well, before 12. And get on the internet here.
Well, it's definitely important enough. Not necessarily me saying it. I don't care who says it, but it's an important thing. So I'm glad that you got up before 12 to hear about this.
It wasn't easy. So why don't you start from the beginning? Tell us what's up.
All right. So, okay. I'm going to try not to bring myself into it as much as just the situation. And just know this, I'm not an expert in law. I don't know a lot about all the different charges that have been brought into this case. I know a few things about it. I've been talking to a lot of people on the podcast, but I'm also, how many episodes have you guys done? How much of the information can you just like rattle off? You know what I mean?
Right.
Off the cuff, that you take in on every episode. I mean, there's only so much I can do if I'm constantly doing new episodes. So, what I will say is, you guys are familiar. I guess this kind of like goes back to. Let's just talk about like in Age of the Sea. Gons, you referenced the movie Age of Aquarius.
Yeah.
And or Age of Evil. Sorry, Aquarius.
The Age of Evil by Keith Thompson.
Yeah, right. So I checked that film out, and I had already been into like Kent Hovind and some other of those dudes that are mentioned in that film that we're talking about, the NWO back in the day. But Kent Hovind for me was somebody like a huge deal in my faith in being able to articulate, the whole evolution, debate and just kind of like win that conversation within the first 5 minutes and talk about, well, which evolution, you know what I mean? And so, I mean, there was that, and then there was the whole, what do you call it? I'm trying to think here. The whole like legal realm, the whole New World Order thing. As I was going through that paradigm shift, so to speak, I would say that Kent Hovind was kind of like my safety net. You know, I'd be hitting up his lectures. It's a very vulnerable time, as we all know, when you're coming to realize all that stuff. So near and dear to me is Kent Hovind. But in your, you referencing that film, I checked out, Age of Aquarius or Age of Evil, Aquarius by Keith Thompson, and that tidbit of information that he drops in there about Bill Cooper, Fritz Springmeier, John Todd, Randall and Bear, and Kent Hovind all being silenced within a 5-6 year span of time. That's kind of interesting. That all those dudes were silenced. 3 of which are gone, and 2 of which are still alive. 1 is in prison. Fritz Springmeier is the only one that's out of prison and alive, as we know right now. And I think he's been on Alex Jones fairly recently in the last couple of years. But
yeah, and he's a guest we're going to have on in the future as well. We've reached out to him.
Oh, awesome!
So go ahead. Sorry.
That is awesome. Good for you guys. So Kent Hovind was one of those 5 that was silenced, let's just say, and Kent was attacked allegedly on the internet. It's for tax evasion is what they're calling it. Now, all of the sources that I've been interviewing, like Ernie Land, who is the trustee or was the trustee of Creation Science Evangelism up until 1999, until Paul J. Hansen, and I'm trying to think of the other guy, and I can't remember the dude's name off the top of my head, but those 2 dudes took over and kind of changed some things. If anybody is listening to this and wants to hear from like those individuals, I have pretty extensive interviews with them on godspropertyradio.com if anybody wants to hear them and just get the other side of the story of what's really going on. Essentially, one of the big charges that Ken was, taken under for was the structuring issue, which I don't know a ton about structuring. I know that it was something that was created during I think it was the 90s, the war on drugs, like kind of thing, whatever was going on. Towards the late 90s, it was being created, or again, like I could be wrong, so don't quote me on like dates. I shouldn't even throw those out there. But basically, structuring has to do with how many transactions somebody does with their bank, whether it be withdrawing or like depositing. So, like for instance, we run a campground, and we're a business, so we can only deposit like. It has to be 10,000 at max, like, every transaction. Like, you can't do any more than that for the structuring, codes and all that were put in place. Otherwise, if you are to do that, then you could be subject to going to jail, basically, which is, a whole other conversation about, the laws or codes and statutes and all that stuff. But, essentially, that's kind of like what happened. They were doing all these transactions. One has to understand that Kent Hovind himself was not a corporation. He did not have a 501c3 status as Creation Science Evangelism. And I also want everybody to please know this. If anybody has studied or at least knows a little bit about, I know you guys talked to Rob Skiba early on in your podcast, and you guys had kind of covered the sovereignty issue in that first like half hour, I think it was, and you talked about like capitis diminutia and all that stuff, the legal rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So that's a tough one. I'm not like that well versed on that stuff either, but I find it pretty fascinating. But basically, Kent Hovind rescinded his Social Security number in 1974. So he's been doing everything as not, in the world, not of the world, so to speak,
Right.
And so with
free man on the land kind of thing.
Yeah, kind of like that. But we also have to be careful, as we know, with like the way that we talk and the words that we use, because a lot of people call it like the sovereign citizen movement, and citizen comes from the word city. A citizen is a subject, and we're not subject to anything but God, really. We shouldn't be subject to the state, and that's a voluntary, contract that's set up without us really, any of us knowing it.
Yeah.
But Kent came to realize these things, and Kent befriended many other people. He was very successful at what he did with creation science evangelism and Dr. Dino or Dr. Tino. I forget what it was called, the park that he had, but in Pensacola, Florida, they handled that such as there was no charge for anybody to come in and go on any of the rides or do anything. Obviously they could buy like videos or T-shirts and stuff like that, but as far as like coming to the actual place, it was a ministry and it was donation only. So some people would come through this place and they would pay absolutely nothing. And then some people were so touched by the Hovens that they would, they had some money in the bank and they would write, I guess it probably wasn't uncommon from what I've been hearing, like, a $10,000 check could be written to the Hovens. So
Right.
You can see that the Lord was really blessing Kent and his family. And I truly believe, I'll just get into the whole employee thing. Kent's employees were not employees. He ran it as a mission, as a ministry. So everybody was a missionary, and it was understood. And he hired many college kids from Christian college nearby, and it was understood basically that they would not pay them. They wouldn't file taxes, et cetera, but they wouldn't pay them. They didn't have a going rate. But it was understood that they would be compensated fairly for their service to the Lord. So that, I'll take care of you guys, but I'm not going to give you a set rate. I'm not going to, we're not going to file this. We're not subject to that because we're under God and we're not under the state,
Right.
So essentially that's how he did everything. I know that may sound a little crazy to many people listening, but I happen to be one of those crazy people that thinks that that's pretty legit. And if you know what you're doing with all that stuff, and I'm not saying I don't know anything about it, but God bless the people out there that have the guts to realize that, at some point, when are our, any of our rights, like when do those completely dissolve, and what's the driving force or the thing that binds us to even obey those things? You rather obey God than man, right? So that's kind of the gist of what happened. His wife went to prison, I think, for 3 years or something. He's been in prison for 8+ years now. He should be getting out in February, but they recently threw 3 brand new charges on Kent, and I don't remember all of the charges. I know it has to do with mail fraud, and I know that the mail fraud thing really can't stick because the package was actually hand delivered by a family member, so it didn't actually go through the U.S. Postal Service. So right there's no way for them to have any jurisdiction over in their mail system.
Now,
I don't know. Again, I don't know all the other.
What's the story with the mail fraud?
Oh, okay, so I'm just going to give you my basic understanding. Essentially, his land, all the land that Creation Science Evangelism had, is being sold, and some of it has been sold. A bunch of people are buying it, and Kent's not had a chance to do anything about it. And everything's been taken from him, and so he's been filing liens in a, I guess you'd call it like a common law sense, not through the, the U.S. United States corporate way. And so he filed a lien somehow through with his trustee, Paul J. Hansen, who is now in Santa Rosa County Jail with him right now, and they're both being charged dually together in this case. And it's set, I think, to happen in February, maybe February 11th or something, I think, at this point. And let me just say this, what brought me into this was we kind of reached out to Paul Hansen because Dan had been following Kent's blogs and things from prison, and found out about Kent. We were really interested in the birth certificate and the social security number, and wanted to do an episode for God's Property Radio on that. So on our 8th episode back in May, we interviewed Paul for about 2 hours in fantastic conversation. At the very end, he basically said what happened to Kent and why Kent's in prison, some of the fraud that went on with that, and not only that, his lawyer completely sold him out of the trial initially. So when they said, what's your defense, the lawyer got up there and said, I have no defense, Your Honor.
Wow.
Completely sold him out.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm giving you guys like very small tidbits of all the things that have happened, because I don't have like the transcripts, I don't have everything in front of me, but I have done many interviews with different people that are related to the Hovens on a friendship basis. So basically, what this is to me is about, you know, a guy who's paid 8+ years of his life to a prison system, which I don't know if it's even biblical to have prison, really. The Bible says that you know, you do something severe, you know, you're dead. You know, I mean, you should be killed. I mean, if you rape somebody, then you probably should die. You know, I mean that's a very drastic look at the Bible and everything. Maybe I shouldn't even talk about this, because, you know, it might get upsetting to people, but I just don't know how just the prison system is, and that's an entirely another discussion. But at this point, 8+ years, Kent Hovind being in prison, I mean, I think it's time for him to go home. That's what I think. I don't know about you guys.
Is there some sort of movement to get him out, or you said he's getting out in February possibly, or what sort of rallying has been done against this? And if I understood you correctly, he's in prison for alleged tax evasion.
That's what they've said, but like realistically, that's just a term, and I my understanding is that he didn't evade any taxes, like, at all.
Right.
Like, that's my understanding from Ernie. That's my understanding from Paul. That's my understanding from Kent himself.
And he technically doesn't even have a social security number. So, with his understanding, he was absolved from anything like that, and he had probably been doing it for about 30 years or so. Right, exactly.
So as far as, to answer your question, the movement, there are some sites that were around kind of helping him. There's a site out there called 2peter3.com, I believe it's called. It might be shifting to 2peter3.org eventually, with somebody else running it, because I think they're changing, whoever the guy that runs it is handing that over to somebody else. But that follows the entire case, like document pretty much by document. If anybody wants to get like the real scoop, check out 2peter3.com. I felt it, again, I mentioned at the beginning of this conversation about Kent that, you know, he's very integral in me keeping my faith, to have many questions answered that the church wasn't answering for me in a pivotal time was huge. And so I feel partially indebted to, you know, God speaking through Kent, because, I mean, that dude was, I don't know, man, like, I can't really disagree with a lot of the things that he said. I mean, I can disagree with other people, like, much easier than Kent Hovind, but, I mean, I truly believe that Kent, everything he wanted to do, he wanted to be right with the Lord. I mean, he wouldn't have done anything that he did if he didn't want to be right with the Lord.
Is there anything else that they tried to throw at him and didn't stick? Because, you know, if I'm looking at it from an outsider's point of view, or the point of view of a non-believer, or the point of view of, you know, the government or something, you have this guy who's not paying taxes, owns a bunch of land, and has a bunch of college interns who he's not paying, well, whatever, you know, is taking care of. I mean, it kind of sounds like somebody could misconstrue that as a cult or something. Is there any allegations like that, or was there anything?
There are a lot of different allegations from different people. I know that Peter J. Riley from Forbes has been writing a lot of articles about Kent since the whole situation happened. Not necessarily in the positive light,
right?
But I don't know specifically. I can't give you any of the arguments that have been against him. I've read some, but what I was going to say I'm really sorry, Basil. I feel like I just totally had like one of those moments where I just like lost everything that you just said.
Oh no! Well, I was just saying, like I could see from the outside, because I'm just trying to see why, with the exception of speaking out against all the shadowiness, why they would pursue him with such fervor. And I just got to thinking, if a guy is not paying taxes and out in the fields with a bunch of college interns who he's taking care of, quote unquote, and could be seen as a religious fanatic, I guess, by some people.
Yes, yes. You know what? I think there are a lot of people that are painting him that way. And to be honest, like I had mentioned earlier, Paul J. Hansen, the guy that we had spoken with back in May on God's Property Radio, he actually hasn't driven with a license since like before 2010. I mean, that sounds crazy to people, you know what I mean? But he successfully has done that. He lived in the Omaha area up until a few months ago. Challenged personal jurisdiction. Took him 2 months to get him from Omaha to Santa Rosa, which is crazy because that trial was actually supposed to go down, I think, in like December,
Right.
So it's pretty insane. So I think Paul knows what he's doing, and I think they know what Paul's doing. And I think that Kent knew what he was doing to a degree, but his main battle was evolution. And so he was, yes, I think really what this case and this trial means, whether or not people agree with the whole concept, what I think it's going to do is it's just another one of those things, as you guys talk about on your show and Gons, as you talk about in your films. This is a case of two extremist Christians that don't have to answer to law, don't have to answer to anything that will do, stop at nothing really to just avoid their responsibility to society,
Right, right. Yeah.
And I think that's what this is really about, or what it's going to be about. I know that Kent did a lot more, though, that made a lot of people angry. I mean, he was calling a lot of public schools. I mean, he was getting textbooks removed from schools. Even in prison, he's been doing that.
Wow.
He's been telling people have contacted him in prison, and he's been like, yeah, it's been this many years, and this specific thing in this book is totally bogus. It's been proven wrong, and they need to get that out of there, so they have to remove the whole book. It's like things like that he was doing, and people have been in contact with Kent and trying to still, he's also, I want to mention this, Kent Hovind has led over 700 men to Christ in prison in the last 8+ years.
Wow. That's incredible.
So, it's not like God can't use him, anywhere. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, I was just going to say, to sum it up, I felt compelled with what I was saying before to start a website, not necessarily with documentation or anything, but just a support, like kind of a hub, as I get articles from people that are written in a positive light towards Kent, as I get people covering the trial, conversations with Kent, conversations with Paul, conversations with anything to do with this trial. I'm just going to keep posting them to this website that I just started called freekent.com. So if anybody wants to go there, you can hit the donate button, and your money is going to go straight to Kent. We're trying to print T-shirts right now. I know that Ark from Destiny Lab, he's kind of involved with that with me. We're trying to get these T-shirts made right now, and it's like $25. You get your own free Kent shirt or a Hove Vindication T-shirt, and the money goes to Kent. So.
Very interesting. Well, that is very interesting. And I definitely want to look more into this, because this is a pretty fascinating case. Myself and Gons have been pretty interested in just the concept of, what did you call it? Not the free man in the land, but
like legal control. Essentially, yeah. I just call it like legal fiction, whatever you want to call it.
It is. That's exactly what it is. Yeah, legal fiction.
Yeah,
we're born into this system, and just as little bitty babies, we're given paperwork that that just sort of binds us into the system.
Yeah, it's funny because I had recently heard a guy. I don't remember the guy's name, and I'm not going to look it up right now, but he basically renounced his birth certificate.
Yeah.
And said that, as soon as you're born, as soon as you are given a name and a birth certificate, you are already tied into the whole Babylonian system and all this. So it's like, the extremes are coming out. And
it is interesting to me how, like the forefathers and the people in charge understand it. They understand that, it is just a system and there are ways to get out of it.
Right.
And there are legal ways to get out of the system. Now, they don't want you to get out of the system, and they don't necessarily want you to know about it, but...
I'm sure the laws and stuff have evolved, too.
Right. Well, and as we've seen in very select cases, people are able to get out of the system, and it's honored. That choice to get out of the system is honored, more or less, by... the system itself. It's almost like, and this might just be me projecting, but I almost feel like the forefathers and the shadow people almost kind of like see that as sort of an enlightenment. If somebody's able to grasp onto the fact that they can actually get out of the system, they may not like it, but they might respect it. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, if you're smart enough to figure out the puzzle, then you're allowed to.
Then you're allowed to get out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and I think that this has been going on for a really long time. I don't think it's like something that just happened in the last, even 100 years. I think that this is really, if you think about it, it really goes back to Babylon. It really goes back to slavery,
Yeah.
And the thing about it is I try to take notes on different lectures on this stuff because I just find it really fascinating. And I'm not, like I said, I'm no brain dude. I'm like an artist. I'm not, it's not really academic backgrounded. But I know that the corporate person, like right here, I'm just going to read you something from my notebook. This is from a lecture by Robin Wright from the Lordship Church. What he did, he's passed away now. I'm trying to get in touch with some people that knew him to do an interview, but on the 501c3 and church incorporation and stuff. But he talks about in 1327, Edward III of England charters the ecclesiastical corporations for charitable purposes. Then in 1596, corporate legislation passed in England, creation of the corporate person, powers, capabilities, liabilities determined of the ecclesiastical corporation.
Yeah.
That's been going around for a while. You know what I mean? It's not nothing new. And if you look up corporate personhood and that kind of stuff, you go down those rabbit trails. Anybody's listening, you can look it up. The word person can mean corporation.
Yeah.
So essentially, the background of the whole thing is your name, the name that your parents think that's so original that they chose for you, is copyrighted by the corporate United States. And that binds you. That's a contract, as we were talking about. And everything's done.
We are property.
Right. And everybody has one that we know, for the most part. But what I found really interesting was doing the interview with Paul Hansen back in May, was that Paul, we were talking about how an American and then a United States citizen, like via 14th Amendment citizen, is totally different. Like, he considers himself an American. Like, he's not a citizen. Again, like the word citizen is like, a subject.
Right.
And he's not subject to that. But he's done a lot of proper paperwork on how to get out of that, and he has a couple websites. I think there's one, pauljjjhansen.com. You can read a ton of stuff on that, and then I think he has freeinhabitant.com or something like that. But he's written extensively on this stuff, and that's what he does. He actually has a lot of, I don't know everything that he did, but I know he owned a bunch of farmland, and he also owned a bunch of properties. So he's actually lost I think, around like $3 million doing this stuff.
Wow.
I mean, like, he's gone to jail, I think, just on little things, you know what I mean? Like, as he learned how to do all this stuff, you know? Anyway, he said that he had a friend that went to Vietnam, I believe it was. And so his friend, they swear you in when you're about to, go in for the service. And so he was, on the line with these other two guys were on each side of him. And he lifted his hand to swear in, and these guys they're next to him, and they're not swearing in. They won't swear in, so they're being drilled like hardcore for like 2 hours. And he was just like, that's really weird, right? So he goes off to Vietnam, comes back, wanted to figure out whatever happened to those two guys that like refused to swear in. Turns out that swearing in is your contract, and those men knew what was going on, so they never had to go to the war. I don't know exactly what happened to them, but he's like, are you kidding? Like that, I had to go fight and almost die in Vietnam, and all I had to do was just not swear in and like know a bunch of other stuff to say that I don't contract with them,
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, well, that's the crazy thing, too. If you think about it, a lot of stuff that we take for granted or we think is just for show or we think is just tradition or we think is just, just for, whatever, is actually legal actions that you're taking and binding contracts that you're making with the system, not even, it's hard to even call it a government because as most people here on the show know that, the entity in control of America right now is not necessarily the original government. It's a corporation that's
right.
Basically been hired to run the country. And not even in a metaphorical sort of, way. It's an actual thing. And so, it just blows my mind. And it's a really radical thing to step outside of that. And, as we can see, it doesn't make everybody too happy with you, and it does sort of open up these doors to definitely make trouble.
Right. Well, I mean, and then you're sitting in this in front of this jury, right? And you're the one who's not paying income tax, for instance,
right.
And the whole jury pays their income. Well, that's not fair, and they're just going to vote against you because you're beating the system,
Right. And they might, they may not even understand the system. Like they might not even, because these are people who have been inside the system and are basically, that's all they know. I mean, that blows my mind when I tell people, when you try to actually explain to somebody that like, you don't actually, like the government isn't actually real. Like, it's not a real thing. It's just something we sort of made up and like you're born into it and you're not necessarily like, you don't actually have to belong to, the system, like, and they just think you're just a hippie stoner. Like it just doesn't register to like think outside of the cage in that way. It's just so outside of people's brains. I mean, and the thing that I love is that it's the forefathers. They're the ones who got it. They're like, oh crap. Well, we know that people actually, belong to God and, you can't actually, but here's a way we can trick them into it. And they've been doing it for generations.
Yeah. Right. No, and what really turned me onto this subject was actually a film by Leonard Ulrich. You guys know Leonard Ulrich. He did the Secret Societies and Biblical Prophecy, Volume 1, Wars and Rumors of Wars, The New World Order. There's this part at the end where he kind of like ties in prophecy to stuff, and it's really interesting. Like he's going through the book of Revelation, and I can't like list out the verses exactly off the top of my head right now, but it talks about like the different items that you find in this city, and he's like kind of drawing like I think the chapter of the film is called the Babylonian Archetype, and he starts to like draw comparisons to New York and Babylon, and that he's not saying that New York is Babylon. He's just saying that it's an archetype of Babylon. Like it fits the bill. It fits the bill, and if it does fit the bill, then it's probably subject to the same judgment that Babylon is. Right. And he says, you can get anything in New York, right? They say you can get anything you want in New York, and so he talks about in this sentence where it's describing Mystery Babylon or whatever. It says, there's a bunch of items that you can get in the city, and it says the last two items in the city, like Leonard basically says, he's narrating, and he says this verse is extraordinarily accurate because the last two items in the city are slaves and the bodies and souls of men, and the souls of men, or whatever it is. So he goes. He says the United States was allowed to become the world's biggest debtor nation when it became bankrupt in 1933, eventually along with all other nations, because your birth certificate is a bond. You are pledged as collateral on the debt of your nation. You are traded as a human resource on the stock exchanges of the world, especially in New York, the home to the largest home to the world's largest stock exchange. And that was, for me, when I watched that film, like that was like the straw that broke the camel's back. Like I had heard so much already, with Building 7 and all that other stuff, and it was just like, this is one thing I have to start studying, Yeah. But as I really do feel led by the Lord to look into this, I think that all of us should be looking into this. I'm not saying that everybody needs to act on it, but I think everybody should be aware. And the reason I think the Lord led me into this is because at one point I went into Wikipedia, of all places. Sorry to reference Wikipedia, but when I had been turned on to Hovind, and I couldn't find anything about his case, but I knew that he was in prison and he had been helping me so much, just by watching his videos. I did check the Wikipedia just to see what he was being arrested or what he was tried for. And if you will read his Wikipedia, they make him sound like a complete moron. I mean, really? Like just to the umpteenth degree.
Yeah, no, I've read that.
But I want to point this out because a lot of people don't get what he was trying to say when he was saying these things. And, we can talk about the meanings of words and stuff, but this is just an excerpt that was on Wikipedia. It says, after being indicted, Hovind claimed incomprehension to the charges, telling the court, I still don't understand what I'm being charged for and who is charging me. Magistrate Miles Davis asked Hovind if he spoke English, to which Hovind responded, to some degree. Davis replied that the government adequately explained the allegations and the defendant understands the charges whether you want to admit it or not. Then Hovind stated that he did not recognize the government's right to try him on tax fraud charges. So you guys have probably heard about the whole stand under, understand. That's what Kent was saying. He was saying I don't stand under your authority. I don't recognize, I do not contract with you, because if you go to Black's Law Dictionary, for instance, I have the 5th edition, not with me, but I have written some definitions in my notebook here. And if you look up the word recognize, it brings you to, it says see recognizance along with the definition of recognize. So if you go to recognizance in 5th edition Black's Law, recognizance states that it's an obligation entered into before a court or magistrate duly authorized for that purpose, whereby the recognizer acknowledges that he will do some act required by law which is specified therein. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, that is interesting.
So all I'm saying is Kent Hovind knew it was up, but when you read that, you're like, this guy doesn't comprehend, he doesn't understand, this guy's retarded.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
that's
the only way to take it.
When in fact he knows better than anybody what's going on and isn't getting fooled into, into compliance with something. Yeah, exactly.
Probably over the head of the judge that was saying that.
Right. It was either over the head of the judge or the judge was, using it to his advantage.
Right. Right.
But no, that's really fascinating. And this opens up a lot of conversation about this. And it's been a while since we've actually talked about this, and it's been a while since I've actually spent any time thinking about it. So I'm kind of glad that this we got to have this conversation. What was the website again you're starting?
FreeKent, FreeKent.com.
Okay.
That is it's up now. I have some updates to do to it, but again, as I get more things, I will just keep posting them.
Right.
I wanted to recommend to you guys, if you want to do an episode on this topic, just to like get a factual documentation type of episode, I can give you the contact info for a guy who we just interviewed, and unfortunately our interview, our Skype cut out during the interview. And so I literally went off of my microphone to get this guy's voice, and it's like horrible quality. I didn't get anything off of Dan's computer because it crashed. But so it's a really lo-fi convo. If you guys want to interview this dude, he has this thing called the Declaratory Act. I don't know if you've ever heard of the Declaratory Act. He's done a lot of research on that and the UCC and stuff like that. You could probably put together about an hour and a half with him just on the legal stuff, and he'll walk you document through document through document proving that this stuff's real.
That's fascinating. Yeah, we're definitely interested in looking more into that. I mean, it might actually be one of the most fascinating things that I've heard of recently. So yeah, we'd definitely be into that. I'm sure our listeners would be interested in that. Everybody listening right now, if you want to get updates on Kent Hovine's situation, you can go to freekent.com and follow him there, get a t-shirt, do something like that. Sam from God's Property Radio, thanks for coming on, buddy.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. You guys are a huge inspiration to us, so we really appreciate being befriended by you guys. So
absolutely, and we love what you guys are doing over there, and I think we're going to do a little bit more stuff together here soon. I think Dan was trying to get me on there to talk about some things. And God's Property Radio, everybody, is a great podcast. If you haven't heard of it yet, go check it out and give these guys your support because they're really great. Gons, anything before we take off here?
Yeah, a few months ago, you had mentioned Leonard Ulrich. He's working on his second film, part 2 or volume 2 of New World Order, Bible Prophecy, and Secret Societies. And I probably butchered the name. It's all that stuff. And we'll have Leonard on to talk about it.
It's called The Illusion of Money.
Right. The second volume. And we'll have Leonard on pretty soon here to talk about his film. But in the process, Sam, you've been working on the soundtrack for the film, which I know what that's like because I putting together Age of Deceit 1 and 2, that was a major part of what I had to do as a one-man production team was put together a soundtrack for the film. So it's cool that you're being the outsourced part of it, and it's probably much more artistically sound, so to speak. But you asked me a few months ago if I'd be interested in playing some guitar on one of the tracks you had, and you sent the raw track, and I love the song. Like, not because I play guitar on it. Like, I legitimately love the song because it's like the lyrics and just, I love it, man. So can you, we're going to probably end the show with the song. Can you tell us a little bit about like what inspired you? And I think that actually the lyrics play nicely with some of the things we talked about in this episode.
Yeah, I don't have the lyrics with me right now. I know a bunch of them, and I'm not a Bible buff as far as like being able to recall certain numbers of verses, but I used a bunch of scripture. I think in each verse I used some scripture relating to money, and I think Leonard actually emailed me a bunch of different verses that I should go through and like perhaps be inspired by, which was totally amazing of him to do because it's when you write a song around scripture, I mean, that is just like a totally different ball game. I mean, it just writes itself, and so I'm just trying to think. The concept, the title of the song is called "Baptized in Credit." I grew up in like the Chicago area, playing shows in kind of like, I guess you'd call them like pop punk indie bands, whatever. And then I was in another band and stuff too for a while. But there's this band that I was like sort of acquainted with, and they had this song where it was called, I think it's called Benediction. This band called the Felix Culpa that I was acquainted with, and they in the song, it's a really awesome song, but you can just tell the disdain for I guess organized religion, so to speak, in the song. Well written song, and they talk a lot about this just the fraud of the banking, and they talk about the new Church of Commerce. And as you come into the New World Order studies, they the 501c3, the fact that we take on in incorporation, we have to become a corporation, which is not a church, which is created by the government, which is not created by Jesus. And when Jesus is knocking at the door, saying, "Hey, I want in on this meeting," well, he's not invited because the government doesn't let Jesus in to anything that you do for the most part. Within reason, we've sold our voices, and unfortunately, and so when I realized, on top of all that, all the New World Order stuff, the 501c3, the legal stuff, the Federal Reserve, all that stuff, I wanted to create kind of a rebuttal to this song called Benediction, which I actually enjoyed the song, but I just disagree with the overall, distaste for Christianity and whatnot. And so in the song, he said something like, "We've been baptized in credit, the eventual fate of the blessed. We're neither saints or salesmen, but somewhere in between." Stuff like that. So my goal with this song was to create something hopefully as witty as what a band like that would create, but use it for the Lord's glory. And in doing so, it got to be the closing song for the film coming out, which I think is really going to resonate with a lot of people. I think that even greater than the first film that Leonard did, I think that this one is going to hit close to home for people that don't know about the Federal Reserve and don't know about central banking and such. Not to mention, he just goes into the entire history of money and what is money, what was money, biblically. But yeah, the song really is just about letting go of your attachment to money and your security, and really just trusting in the Lord. I mean, this is like the most basic way I can say it, and really just giving it up for the Lord. I mean, it's not that the Lord won't provide those things, but it's that we need to be putting the Lord first, and we need to be redeemed, because that's really the only stock we should be putting anything in. If you don't mind, I just wanted to plug this. I'm going to be creating a website called God'sPropertyMedia.com, which is an extension of God's Property Radio. I'm actually going to be releasing the CD soundtrack and the film, the DVD. I'm going to be distributing Leonard's film with that in the coming months. So be on the lookout maybe around May for those things to be coming.
One to buy online. loves treasures on earth where moss and vermin destroy. And where thieves break in and steal, when things get way too real, will we reach out for the guns or will we reach out to God? And if you're with me, saving dollars while we're losing souls on a whole nother level. They say time is money and you can get more money to find, but you can't get more time. If we can't save or die, might as well spend all of our time. The only one who spent it on the same. Before you cash it all out, before your soul gets sold out, just breathe, repent, and you shall be redeemed. If we can't save a dime, we might as well spend all of our time. If we can't save a dime, we might as well spend all of our time. The only one who spent it on the same. Before you cash it all out, before your soul gets sold out, just breathe, repent, and you shall be redeemed. We can't save or die. Might as well spend all of our time. The only one who spent it on the same. Before you cash it all out, before your soul gets sold out, just breathe, repent, and you shall be redeemed.
There you have it, everybody. I hope you liked some rock and roll. Good job, Guns. Good job.
Thanks.
You're an axeman. An axeman.
I am an axeman, and I'm glad I can use it for something worthwhile. You know.
For Jesus.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I used to, practice a lot for silly reasons.
For Satan. No, good job. That was great. Okay, so there you have it, everybody. You got some music. You got some good stuff there. Some legal information.
Before we wrap up here, Sam wanted me to inform everyone that if Kent Hovind gets sentenced again with these new allegations, he and Paul will basically die in prison. They won't be able to get out during their lifetime. So he just wanted to stress upon the level of importance of this case that's coming up here. And number two, if there's anyone out there who are Christian musicians or artists who want to submit original content for the Kent Hovind benefit compilation, they can email MP3s to godspropertyradio@gmail.com. So he just wanted me to give those little tidbits as a afterward.
All right. Sounds good. If you have not yet, you can like us on Facebook. We love you when you do that. Well, we like you back. Also, we're on Twitter. You can follow us on Twitter. Go to iTunes, leave us a review or a rating because, people need to know. People need to know why you love or hate us so much. Also, if you'd like to support Canary Cry Radio financially to keep Gons and I out of the gutter and still connected to the internet, We would so gratefully appreciate that. We're also appreciative of those who already do that. And if you want to join that club, you can go to canarycryradio.com. There you can sign up for a monthly donation of $5 or $10 or whatever. There's a whole bunch of choices. Dollars per month, which is just such a blessing to us. But if commitment isn't your thing, you can go ahead and leave a one-time donation of any amount you want. Any amount. It could be like $13.74. It could be whatever. So that's the thing. Thanks everybody for listening to this Canary Cry Flyby. Make sure to tune in next time. And until then, think outside the cage.